Okay, so you're trying to maximize your gains and get as strong as possible, but you also like the idea of intermittent fasting. But obviously you can't do that, because if you do that, then it's going to kill your gains and kill all the work you've been doing in the gym. So what do? Well, does intermittent fasting actually kill those gains you get in the gym in the first place? Well, the idea would make sense, because the whole point of intermittent fasting is this time-restricted eating. For example, I do intermittent fasting, and I eat my first meal at around 1 p.m. and my second meal at around 8 p.m., and that's all I eat all day. So that's my 7 hours of eating in that window, and then the other 17 hours I don't eat. Obviously, there's other ways to do intermittent fasting, but you get the point. If you're restricting your eating window, then you're giving your body more time to break down different products, but you're also giving your body less time to make muscle proteins. So I could see how this would lower your ability to gain muscle or even maintain your muscle mass. But before we jump to any conclusions, let's look at some studies. So the first study I want to talk about is a systematic review, and it was looking at intermittent fasting and how it affects people's weight loss and their muscle gains. Now, this study was only looking at people under 60 years old. So the main finding of the study was that if you are doing resistance training, so resistance training is kind of how the name implies, it's doing some sort of exercise with some sort of resistance. So an example of this is weightlifting. And they found that if you're doing this resistance training, that intermittent fasting along with that can help improve your body composition, especially in overweight people. Okay, so that was a lot of random words. What the heck does that really mean? Basically, what that means is if you intermittent fast while doing this resistance training, it'll help you lose fat, but also help you at least maintain your muscle mass. So the big thing here is all of these participants were working out. You have to do that if you want to at least maintain your muscle mass and improve your body composition if you are intermittent fasting. Let's look at another study. The second study was this randomized control trial, and it was looking at intermittent fasting and how it affects your skeletal muscle protein synthesis. Basically, the muscles that you're trying to build. So first off, I want to point out that there are a couple problems with this study. One is it was only looking at either overweight or obese people. And the second problem is they weren't even working out in the study. So how did the study work? It had two different groups. One group was a time-restricted eating group, and the second one was a normal eating group. And this went on for about 10 days. So both of these groups ate 3 meals a day. The first group was a normal eating group, and they ate one meal at 8 a.m., the second meal at 2 p.m., and their third meal at 8 p.m. The second group ate their first meal at 10 a.m., and their second meal at 2 p.m., and their last meal at 6 p.m. So basically, the second group had about 4 hours of less eating time than the first group. So what did they find? Well, after 10 days, they found out that their muscle protein synthesis was not any different. Also, they found that both groups lost total body mass. So both the groups lost weight. But the time-restricted eating group ended up losing more lean mass. Now, that's a bad thing, right? And also, the normal eating group lost more fat. So what does that mean? Does time-restricted eating make you lose muscle? And does eating at normal interval help you lose fat? Well, not necessarily. Like I said, remember, there were a couple caveats with the study. The one being that it was only looking at overweight and obese people, but the second, they weren't working out at all in the study. So what do you take away from the study? Well, the literal thing would be if you are an overweight or obese person and you don't work out, it's probably better for you to eat at a normal interval than to do intermittent fasting. But otherwise, if you are doing some sort of resistance training, then at the very least, you can maintain what muscle mass you have. And this is going back to that first study, which is probably a lot higher evidence than that second study I showed. But that being said, if you are actually trying to build muscle and gain as much muscle as you can and get as big as you can, then time-restricted eating doesn't really make sense for you. If that's really your goal, you probably want to be eating as much as you can in the first place, but you also don't want to be restricting your eating window. But I think for the vast majority of people, they don't want to look like a bodybuilder. They just want to look strong and also be healthy. In that case, it's perfectly fine to do this time-restricted eating, but make sure that you're working out. Now, obviously, this depends on other things as well, like what are you actually eating in the first place, how are you sleeping, how much are you sleeping, etc. There's so many other things that play into building muscle. So really, it comes down to what your actual goals are. Does intermittent fasting kill your gains? No. But it probably isn't the best way to build more muscle. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video, and if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.